Hi there, I'm your playwright-in-residence, Andy Black, and welcome to The Play's the Thing. I'm a playwright and I teach playwriting. I'm currently working on my PhD in theater and performance studies at the University of Missouri. This video is part of a series on topics related to playwriting. In previous videos, I've talked about places playwrights get ideas for plays. I talked about what I call the collective unconscious, or borrowing a plot from another play or a traditional story. I talked about telling a story based on your own personal history or something that actually happened to you. Today, I'll talk about writing a play based on an historical event or person's life. I've used an historical event as a source of inspiration for a play myself. My play was called Bitten by a Boom Slang. It was inspired by the civil war that took place in an African nation called Sierra Leone in the late 1990s. I'm going to give you two examples of well-known plays that have been inspired by historical events. I provide these examples simply to stimulate your thinking. I could do an entire 60-minute lecture on historical plays and still have only scratched the surface. These two examples will help you see the variety of ways that historical material can be dealt with. The first historical play is about the American author, political activist, and lecturer, Helen Keller. The play is called The Miracle Worker. Now, Keller was blind, deaf, and mute as a result of an early childhood illness. The Miracle Worker was written by William Gibson and dramatizes a section of Helen Keller's early life in 1887 when a teacher named Annie Sullivan entered her life.
Is it possible even to teach a deaf, blind child half of what an ordinary child learns? Has it ever been done?
Huh?
A tenth.
No. Dr. Howe did wonders, but an ordinary child? No, never.
Keller was 6 years old at the time, and because of her disabilities, was completely isolated from the outside world. Annie Sullivan was able to teach Keller a finger spelling technique for communication. This play is a fairly straightforward retelling of this transformational event in the life of this historical figure. I'll make two observations. First, Gibson did not try to dramatize Helen Keller's entire life. I'll say I have fantasized about writing a play about Keller myself. As an adult, she became a real firebrand and, among other things, a radical socialist. Gibson, however, wisely selected one key event in Keller's life and used that as the basis for the play. Secondly, Gibson chose to make Annie Sullivan the play's protagonist, Sullivan being the teacher who worked with Keller. Rather than making Keller the protagonist, he used a supporting character as its focal point. Now, it's tempting to assume that the famous historical character should be the protagonist. However, the protagonist needs to have a strong goal, and the way The Miracle Worker is structured, Sullivan is the one with the goal, not Helen Keller. Now, for my second example of a play based on historical events, I'll turn to one of the most celebrated musicals of the 21st century.
I'm past patiently waiting, I'm passionately smashing every expectation, every action's an act of creation. I'm laughing in the face of casualties of sorrow. For the first time I'm thinking past tomorrow. And I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. And you will just like my country, I'm young, scrappy and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my
Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Now, in a complete turn from The Miracle Worker, Miranda takes a great deal of artistic license with events from Alexander Hamilton's life. The story is so theatricalized that Alexander himself might not recognize it. Miranda does not let historical facts get in the way of telling a good story. From his multiracial casting of key parts such as Aaron Burr and George Washington, who are both designed to be played by black men, to specifics of the plot, one element of which involves the positioning of Hamilton's friendship with his wife's older sister. History suggests that Alexander Hamilton did have a friendship with his wife's sister Angelica, though Miranda's play suggests a more complex relationship between the two than probably existed. However, the key takeaway is that Miranda's success is partly due to his artistic instincts and his interest in conveying the spirit of Alexander Hamilton's life rather than presenting it in a documentary fashion. So, if you've concluded you want to write a play about a historical event, let me provide you some tips as you think through your approach. First, be prepared to do some research. For my play about the Civil War in Sierra Leone, I had to do an amazing amount of research on the events and the culture. I traveled to Sierra Leone as part of my process, which was a wonderful adventure but a lot of work. And I will say the kind of research I needed to do was harder than I could have imagined it would be in a country without a developed infrastructure. Second, if possible, narrow your scope. If you're interested in a person, try to find a specific incident which is representative of that individual's life in general. The plot of too many plays inspired by historical characters could be described this way. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then she died. Anyone's life can become pedestrian if the story is not framed by a major dramatic question. One of my students was writing a play about Frederick Douglass, another great political activist from the 19th century. She elected to place the entire play on a single train ride as Douglass traveled to a speaking engagement in a city in northern Indiana where he had been attacked and permanently disabled years before. The dramatic question of her play was, would Douglass be willing to get off that train when it arrived and run the risk of experiencing the same kind of reception? As the play unfolded, Douglass reflected on the experiences of his life as a way of helping him with this struggle. Those experiences were presented in flashback. In the end, he got off the train and was honored with a hero's welcome. Third, do not be too respectful of your subject. Have fun with him or her. History is full of life, energy, and personality. If audience members are going to enjoy your play, they need to enjoy your characters, who will hopefully have quirks, peccadillos, and even faults to make them interesting and vibrant. Fourth, you'll need to figure out where to take artistic license to make the story engaging. As I've said before, real life often lacks a truly compelling narrative arc. Be prepared to take artistic license with the facts to make your story work, and then be sure you can justify your choices as needed. Finally, the human story is what will engage your audience. You need to have a real protagonist engaged in a real struggle. Simply taking one-dimensional characters and dropping them into an exciting historical setting will not make for an engaging theatrical experience. A simple note on legal issues. If the characters you're writing about have passed away, there should be no significant legal repercussions for reasons I won't elaborate on here. If the characters are still alive and are public figures, their stories are usually considered public property, giving others the ability to write about them. If they're alive but not public figures, they can be asked about their feelings about having their story put into theatrical form. I'm not a lawyer, though, so if you have reason to be concerned about these matters, you can always contact an attorney. In my case, the protagonist of my story about Sierra Leone was based on a real living person, but I so completely fictionalized his character that while I could say the play was inspired by real events, I could not have said that it was based on real events. Therefore, I felt very comfortable using the story and repurposing it for my own artistic reasons. So, that's the skinny on allowing yourself to be inspired by historical events for a play of your own. I'll end with a prompt. Pick 2 to 3 historical characters or an historical situation that fascinates you. Do a quick internet search and see if you can find a single incident related to the event or person that you might write about. Now get out your trusty notebook and make some notes. What appeals to you about the story? Who might be the protagonist? The character or someone from the person's circle? How might you structure a major dramatic question to engage your audience? Do some pre-writing and see where your imagination leads you. Now, there are two sources left for us to talk about, places that playwrights might get ideas. Social or political issues, which I'll talk about in the next video, and pure inspiration, which will come after that. If you want to follow me on social media, please do. I can be found on Facebook at Andrew Black Playwright. My Twitter handle is @AndyPlaywright, and my website is www.andrewblackplaywright.com. As always, I've enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing them. I look forward to the next time we connect, and until then, stay creative.